A very good morning to you. This is the Daily Brief and it starts right now. My name is Wafula. Time now to have a look at some of the stories making headlines as at this hour. For now, we also have our sign language interpreter as Walter Asewe. And this is some of the top stories that we are looking at. And of course, all focus this week has been on matters education, even as the fate of boarding schools now remains unknown after officials within the Ministry of Education proposed to scrap off boarding schools for reasons that we shall talk about. And of course, we're looking at parents to shoulder the cost of destroyed structures. Remember, government said that they will not fund, or rather remove any money from Treasury to fund the damages that has been made in the schools. Quite a number of schools remain closed as at this time. Now, ex-US President Barack Obama to arrive in the country on Sunday, where he will tour his hometown, or rather home area of Kogalo. Lots of preparations happening in that particular area. The residents, they're definitely looking forward for this particular visit, said to be a high-level one. Quite a number of philanthropists as well as U.S. celebrities will accompany the former U.S. president. Meanwhile, CJ Maraga is set to open the annual Criminal Justice Conference, which will also be crossing over there to take a look at some of the things that they will be discussing. And then finally, the Kenya Wildlife Service investigating the death of at least 7 of the 14 rhinos that were translocated from the Nairobi and the Nakuru National Parks into the Tsavo National Park. So they're trying to look at what exactly could have led to the rhinos losing their lives. So those are some of the top stories that we are following as at this hour. Now, our Twitter handles at K24TV. The hashtag is the Daily Brief. Texting 9 is 21222. You can always let us know what is happening around you. Now, before I introduce my guest, this is the question that we're simply asking you to engage us on. Do you support the government's decision to actually scrap off boarding schools? Do you support government's proposal to scrap off boarding schools? Remember, this is at its initial stage in a proposal by the Principal Secretary in that particular ministry, Mr. Bello Kipsang, who was speaking yesterday before a parliamentary committee. We shall find out your further sentiments a little bit later in this live broadcast. Now, before we take a look at how that went down, joining us right now, we have political and current affairs analyst Karanja Thariki. Thank you very much for joining us. We also have Mr. Simon Washira, who's a research coordinator at the School of Education in Tangaza University. We have sister, Dr. Jane Gikonyo, from the very same university, that is Tangaza. She is an associate dean in the School of Education. And then we have Mr. Reverend Dr. Julius Wercher, who is the founder and CEO of the ACAD Education Group. So, as you can see, we're beginning on with matters education. Now, this is the story that we are talking about. The government has proposed, or rather suggested, in doing away with boarding schools in what we expect different reactions in regards to this. But their main reasoning here is that, parents need to play an important role in bringing up their children. And they believe that this will actually put an end to rest of the ongoing schools unrest. Take a look at this.
The increasing number of school unrests that have hit the headlines in the last 2 weeks has gotten the Education Committee in Parliament concerned.
Our letter referenced that.
And Thursday, Education Principal Secretary Dr. Bello Kipsang appeared before the committee to shed light on the arson attacks that have generated confusion and anxiety only 3 months to the scheduled national examinations.
And we have identified delocalization as a primary cause this year, 2018.
You are brief on the banning of schools.
According to Kipsang, some students were colluding with teachers to cause chaos to protest the transfer of head teachers.
The government policy on delocalization will continue to be implemented. We are not about to allow our children to guide us on who will run our schools.
A resolute decision that puts to rest voices that have called for a stop to the transfer of teachers, claiming it was partly to blame for the unrests. Kipsang instead proposed the strengthening of day schools as a possible solution.
The future of any country is day schooling. This is one of the countries where obsession of boarding schools is so high.
Could this be a hint towards abolishing boarding schools that have for a long time offered the necessary solution for thousands of students who study in far-flung areas? Only time will tell. So far, Nyanza and Western regions are the worst affected by the wave of violence that was last witnessed in 2016. In line with that, 4 students of Homa Bay High School were today charged with attempted arson, with police claiming they were found in possession of a container of petrol Tuesday night. This coming only a day after 8 students of Kisii High were arrested after they were captured on camera setting their school alight. For education stakeholders, it is the hope that a lasting solution will be arrived at that will see an end to the recurrent unrest and offer hope to thousands of students seeking quality education in a safe environment.
Obsessions in boarding schools is quite high, is what the PS Belio Kipsang had to say yesterday. And still in line with our question of the day, simply asking you whether you support the government's decision to actually propose to scrap off boarding schools. Remember, this is at its initial step, came up as a suggestion to the Parliamentary Committee on Education yesterday. Let me start with you, Karanja, all the way to Dr. Weche here. What do you think about this particular proposal? Just opening remarks about this.
Thank you, Ian, for having me. The issue of whether we need boarding schools or we don't, that's the question that you're asking.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. I don't know what is happening in the Ministry of Education, because to me, I'm feeling that there are too many knee-jerk decisions that are being made currently. We just recently heard that they want all students to wear the same uniform.
Actually, just to clarify that was a proposal coming from the Kenya Parents Association and not the Ministry of Education. Although the Ministry seems to be leaning towards that.
Yeah, it was, because Dr. Kipsang actually alerted Rivertex that they should be ready to roll out the textiles and all that. So yeah. They seem to be talking from the same plan. And then the boarding schools. Let's do some research. I partially agree with him that maybe we are too concerned. You know, we really need too many boarding schools. Yeah. But then again, there are very good reasons why we should have boarding schools, including the fact that even in our schools, yeah. I mean, in our parents and some situations, they don't even have learning facilities for the students. So they want to go to boarding schools.
Yeah, Simon.
Yeah, to some extent, I would agree with him, but. Not for everything. I accept that boarding schools have been overrated in terms of what they can do for our children. But in many cases, we tend to transfer the responsibility of the home to the boarding schools. Yeah. And we have schools that are, children that are operating under very tight situations, such that sometimes they cannot breathe. And they can only work under control of another person, and that way sometimes they tend to erupt. Maybe it's time that we started considering that we have so many institutions, and probably it's time that we start opening day wings even in our national schools, so that they can be accessed by the general public.
Thank you, Simon. Yes. Sister, let me hear from you.
Thank you, Ian. I also tend to somehow agree, yeah. Because you realize that some of our boarding schools, we start from primary. So you can imagine a parent who is kind of putting the child at a very early age to a boarding school. Who will impact values to that particular child? So it's like the responsibility is just being given to the teacher. Yeah. The teacher who is overloaded with a lot of work. Okay. But I also tend to think that instead of reacting, could we do some research to what is causing these strikes?
And I'm going to be reading out to you a common factor, because I have a list of the schools that have been closed indefinitely or, had unrest, and they have given some of the reasons why there was that kind of clash within the schools. But Dr. Weche, let me hear from you. And you're taking a PhD in matters mentorship. Do you agree with the statement that parenthood has been transferred from the parents and homes into the schools?
That is actually very correct. It has been transferred. Yeah. And unfortunately, we have not upskilled those that we are expecting to carry that duty out. The teachers who are being paid to teach are not necessarily the right people who are supposed to now instill these values that they are looking for. And because the values have not been instilled, as Dr. Aria said here, they have no problem with burning down schools when they have challenges that are arising. So one of the first things that we need to teach some of these children is to understand the role of leadership development. They need to lead themselves first so that they are able to now understand what they need to do when they need to do it, so that they can then be able to lead others. But if you're not creating an environment where that kind of character and those values are instilled, then we lose the plot.
Let's take a look at this particular research before we really, delve into whether we need boarding schools or not, and why there has been an ongoing unrest. In Murang'a County, for instance, Kionyu Girls High School, as part of why they went on strike, is because they were demanding for the return of the principal. In Isiolo School, students protested over the transfer of the head teacher. And then we have 6 schools in Baringo County. I'm not going to name all of them because of time. In the 6 schools, research shows that 4 had new head teachers as a result of delocalization. And then let me read one more here, because now the community is involved. This is in Marsabit, a school known as Chalby Boys. What the ministry found that parents and the community say non-local teachers are not welcome. Let's talk about that, Karanja.
Ian, I think we should be careful about the use of the word research, because there is no research. Those are just reactions from the students. Somebody goes and interviews them and they tell them, and that really is not the problem. You see, when they talk about transfers and they talk about principals going out, that really may not be the problem. Here, and I think that's what Dr. was saying. But it is a common factor in quite a number of the schools. It is. It's a common factor. It's what they're talking about, but there must be some underlying reasons why this is happening. It cannot be that. And some of these things that we're talking about, it could be a reflection of the societal decay that we are having within our institutions and within our communities. So if, for example, a principal is transferred and students riot because a principal was transferred, or these issues of decolonization, that shouldn't be the case. There must be some root that we have to trace to the society of defiance, of a lack of ability for us to manage and develop our child in a way that they are respectful and they understand why they are in school. I happen to be a teacher, and I'm also a head of a chair of a board of schools, so I understand these things quite well.
Sister, how do you see it in terms of the fact that perhaps the school's management or even the teachers seem to, rather the students are shifting the blame on the change here?
I truly don't agree. I don't think that is the root cause, because I was just thinking, even during our days, principals used to be transferred, but we never went on strike because a teacher had been transferred. I tend to think there are underlying factors, and those are the factors that we need really to be concerned about. It's not just that the teacher has been transferred. I think, as we see, even look at our society. Every now and then we go on strike. Every company or organizations, when employees go on strike, we go to the road and we are burning tires. What are we saying? This is the way to resolve grievances. So I think there are underlying factors that we really need to...
In your opinion, what would you say are these underlying factors?
One of the things that I think, in terms of values, as a society, what are our values? And I think that's where we should begin, and starting to look at that. What are our values?
Okay, Oshira, maybe you can also comment on this in terms of what would you say are the underlying factors now that most of my panel seems to distance themselves from perhaps the teachers and even the school management?
Well, I also agree that the values play a significant role. For instance, if you look at the trends of the violence that we see in our schools, they tend to happen almost like synchronized with our electoral cycles. And each electoral cycle is accompanied with a lot of violence, a lot of hatred, and a lot of even sometimes we think that we can get the leader of our choice and put them in the office by force. Similarly, if the person that we don't like is put or is purportedly elected, we tend to think that we can actually remove them and put them into that thing. And we'll go to the street, demand mass action. If it is not right now, it must be right now. Kama sio sasa ni sasa hivi. So we've tended to solve our issues with a lot of violence. And our children are not reading from a different script. They will do the same. is that if you remember from our last conversation, our education system is a mirror of the society. And we cannot do something in the society and expect that the school system will do a different thing. Okay. They will still be violent.
Dr. Oecho, do you agree it is a reflection of the society in terms of what we're seeing in schools right now?
It's a reflection of the values that our leaders are actually demonstrating to us. Yeah. When the leaders demonstrate that it is okay to do A, B, C, D, then the followers are always going to come and follow. So even within the school system, we strongly suggest that they need to ask, how are we developing the leaders within the schools? And I have always suggested that for institutions that are willing to listen to what we do in terms of mentorship, for which I'm glad some of the top national schools listen to us, we take time to start instilling certain values to the school leaders. And those school leaders are then going to impact the students. So that, for example, when that kind of unrest begins to simmer, the leaders are able to know how they can have alternative dispute resolution mechanisms to address the grievances, not just to go and ban the schools. Okay,
Karanja, over to you, because now even before we perhaps go ahead and scrap off boarding schools, there are some that say the conditions in which the students study at these boarding schools is maybe one aspect that is making them also uneasy in schools. Do you think this is something that should be reviewed even before we scrap that off?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in fact, now we are talking about underlying situations, underlying reasons why these things are happening. It's not about all of what we're talking about. And I like what the Reverend is talking about, the issue of leadership and mentorship. Because if you have a strong leadership base within an institution, especially in schools, these riots, these people would listen to their siblings. Because they are their peers, and they will listen to them. And if they recognize them as leaders, they will actually be able to listen to them. I just gave just recently, I think this week, if not last week, a motivational talk, just trying to bring out leadership and motivating my students out, asking them, what really is the problem? Why are you not performing as I would want? And then it was like entertainment, canteen. That really is not an issue. I told them, we are going to give you canteens and entertainment. Is that going to improve your performance? So maybe we need, I still go back to the issue of research. Let's do some very good studies and let's talk to these people. Let's understand our students. But then the role of the parents, I think that needs to be re-emphasized because this problem starts at home. I can tell you for a fact how we behave within our homestead, that if there is no blue band in the morning, there is a riot within the homestead, that is going to be transferred to the schools.
Let's talk about the parenting aspect now, because Karanja has already opened that can of worms. What do you have to say about that, Washira?
Seemingly, we tend to think that we as parents can transfer our responsibility from the home to the school. Okay. We are very busy trying to make a living. And sometimes we hardly even connect with our kids. Many of the time we will just think, my role is to pay school fees, to provide for you, and that's it. But hardly do we even get one-on-one, connect heart-to-heart with our children. And if we think we are connecting, sometimes those of us who are endowed a little bit will take them out for an outing. And when we go for an outing, I'll go with my newspaper or with my laptop. And that's the kind of thing that we have. But how did we even say, how do we, who did you meet today? How did you relate? Is there any problem you faced in today? How did you solve it? All these are things that we are not, the relational skills, negotiation skills, they are things that we are not teaching our children.
Sister, are there any change or other trends that you've observed when it comes to parenting, if you can compare back then and right now?
Yeah, I remember when we were growing up, our parents used to sit with us, there was no TV, or even if there is TV, it is limited because we need to sit and talk. And then things that they will talk about, how do you live with each other? How do you the respect for another person, the respect for the elders. So there was quality time with our parents. But unfortunately, what we see today, parents are busy trying to make a living. I want to agree with what Mr. Washira has said. And I remember one student telling me, my parents give me everything, but they are very busy. One time they are out of the country, but they never give me love, and that is what I need. So you realize that parents are very busy these days. in terms of our economy situation. They have to make a living, they have to pay tuition, they have to do all this. But I think they're also forgetting one important aspect, the growth of this particular child. And
I'd like all of you to take this question. I'll start with you, sister. Then how do we bridge this particular gap that you're saying is lacking between the parents and the students?
And I think one of the ways is how can parents spend more time with their children? I think maybe in schools also, what I have seen in some schools, we bring parents. Parenting courses are very important. You see, some of people are just going into parenting, but maybe they don't know what parenting is all about. So if we see that as a gap, what are we doing as even learning institutions? How are we even preparing our teachers? Because that is also an aspect that we also need to focus on, so that they get to know a parent has a responsibility. Okay. And even when you have a parent in school, don't really take the full responsibility of really guiding that child. Bring the parent on board. Yes.
Okay, Dr. Weche, in terms of bridging the gap between the parents and the students.
Well, one of the things I believe in is that you have to make it interesting and exciting. You have to be able to demonstrate the value of whatever solution you're bringing on board. A lot of the persons who are in charge of these institutions may not necessarily have the skills to be able to communicate with parents, so that the parents can understand that if I give half a day of my time, it's going to result in A, B, C, and D. What the schools tend to do is they just issue out a circular. You know, you get this circular in very poorly written English, demanding that you need to turn up, and it's not even demonstrating why you need to go there. So unless we can also start upskilling some of our leaders in the school educational system to understand how to communicate value to the parents, it will be very difficult for those parents to now come and then be able to understand what it is that they need to do, so that they can in turn raise a proper generation in the future to come.
Okay, Karanja, and then Washira on the very same question.
Yeah, okay, in a way we do relate with the parents, because there are all these economic pressures. Let's actually agree on that. I mean, there are all these economic pressures. I mean, times are hard, and they need to go out and earn some bread. And in some of the schools that we've been, I have actually asked for attendance, and they simply tell me we can't, because we live from hand to mouth. Okay. Yeah, we are there, and we are getting this. If I don't go to work today, I'll get my 500 shillings so that I can feed this child. I'm not going to do it. But on the other hand, it is also a profound reaction when you tell them that, look here, you are going to lose your child while looking for this money. So by the time that you get back to the child, you are worlds apart. I'm very proud on one thing that I always used to do. When my kids were younger, I always made sure that I took them personally to school in the morning. And those were the best moments of my life, because we engaged, we bonded, all those things that we did. And I think it has helped me later on in life, you know, to relate with them and for them to listen up to me. At the end of the day, Ian, there's this quote that I always tell people that what you live, it is not what you live in the child. It is what you live in the child, not what you leave to the child. It is not the property that you're giving me. It is actually what you live inside the child that actually matters at the end of the day. Okay. And character is important, and you are not going to grow that character when this person is grown up. It's when there's a child.
Okay, Washira, and then I can read the feedback, and then I take your final comments on this. Quite some interesting feedback we're getting right now.
Well, I think staying on the same line is that we as parents do need to be very much attentive to our children, and I think if you have to look at the society, it's not so much about the much investment that we can do, but that matters. But the priority should, if you are a parent, the first thing you can leave a legacy in is the quality of the people that you bring. And it is not so much that you can give them so much. Indeed, many of us have even not considered inheriting what we will be given by our parents. Yeah. But it's because of maybe you are held by your hand and you are told, work hard for yourself, and we were journeyed with. And that way, if we too, the current parents, can journey with our parents, will actually make a greater generation that will be coming. We have not lost it, but we can still go back and...
Okay. I'm going back to you guys for final feedback, for final comments. But on our question, we've simply been asking you whether you support the government's proposal to scrap off the boarding schools as a means to curb not only unrest, but also to ensure that parents spend more time in the bringing of their children. The question will be on your screens shortly. But African Rapper says, school is not meant just to cover syllabus in the books. In fact, teachers know your kids more than the parents do. Gikonyo says, and many times don't solve problems, we suppress them. Our children are quick to learn from us. We are the immediate role models. So some of your sentiments here, they agree with some of your sentiments. And then we have Henry MK, who simply says that boarding schools don't make sense in the 21st century. Why should a child sleep in school in the name of studying? The concept of boarding schools only seem to perpetrate inequality in education because boarding schools are only for the rich. Maybe someone can take that and comment for that as well. And finally, Joseph Leakey says, yes, at least for like 4 years, and this will allow parents to reconnect with these youngsters because the gap is also wide. And then the very last one here, MK Red Planet says, parents need a break from their kids. Let me just take final comments from Dr. Rachel.
well, some of the kids are really a number. You know, the parents really struggle to have a relationship with them. They are very difficult. Yeah. But so I understand. You know, the parents do need that kind of a break.
So if government decides to go with this particular move, for them to make it a success, how will this work?
Well, again, the parents will just have to change their paradigm. Their parents will have to understand that the children are actually more important than the money that they are making out there. Yeah. The parents will have to just seriously undergo a paradigm shift. Okay. There will be no other alternative.
Thank you, Dr. Oche. Sister, your final word about this. Parents need a break from their children is what someone says.
I find that very interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't think really parents need like a 3 months break from their children. Yeah. They need to be with their children because remember, these are the first parents. When you take your child to a teacher, maybe even you don't know the values that this teacher holds, then I think you are giving your child to the wrong person. Okay. So I think they need to spend more time with their children.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Oshira.
Staying on the comment of a break?
Not necessarily a break, but your final word, in case government decides to go with this, you know, what should they do to make it a success?
Wonderful. I think we've seen a model that has come up in the education sector where we are developing a secondary school around any public school. And the aim in the long run, it should be that you can actually succeed in terms of your education coming from home. You don't have to travel all the way from say, Nairobi to a national school in, say, Kakamega or Northeastern. We can build the current secondary schools that we are building in the local situations, and we make the cost of education a little bit attainable. Yeah. And that way, children can actually operate from their homes. And then the resources can be channeled into these schools instead of these
Karanja, your final word. Someone here says that boarding schools are reserved only for the rich.
Yeah, I heard that, but before I get to that, I'm getting amused about the parents need a break from their children. Yes. They are children, not anybody else's children. Yeah. Maybe I need a break from my wife. Maybe my wife needs a break from me.
I hope you'll be safe after leaving this.
My point is, don't run away from responsibilities. Okay. I think you should actually be fighting to be with your children and also allow them space to go. Allow them space, as much as possible, be with them, but allow them space to get an education and to involve themselves. It should be the other way around, really. Yeah. And for boarding schools that are for the rich, I'm not too sure about that because I know that if I am rich, there is a possibility that there is good space and good environment for my child to learn in a day school environment. The converse is actually not true because these people, they stay, I don't know whether people do understand in the education system. Some of these parents, and they are the majority, they stay in one-roomed house, not one-bedroomed, one-roomed house. Imagine the situation, learning situation in that one-roomed house and the tensions and the pressures of bringing up, it just
So boarding school provides a good environment for the students to learn in that particular case. We're maintaining Karanja Thariki, but we're letting go of sister comes first. Sister Dr. Jane Gikonyo, who is the Associate Dean of the School of Education at Tangaza University. We also have Mr. Simon Washira from the very same university. He is a research coordinator within the School of Education. Thank you very much. And then finally, Reverend Dr. Julius Weche, who's the founder and CEO Africa for Acad Education Group. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. We're taking a short commercial break, and of course, the Daily Brief continues. We continue to follow quite a number of live events that we are following right here on the Daily Brief, including the preparations for the homecoming of former U.S. President Barack Obama. Stay tuned.